Today, we're doing a deep dive into my travel sketching process. We're breaking down this quick sunflower field sketch that I painted in rural Japan, which took me about 40 minutes in real time. I promise you, this is going to be a very easy painting to do. On-location sketching like this is my favorite way to capture memories while traveling because it makes those moments so much more vivid and meaningful. I'll walk you through every detail of how I painted this piece, from simplifying the busy landscape to adjusting the composition to improve framing, and sketching quickly while keeping the watercolor light, expressive, and whimsical. A quick note before we dive in, I am painting today's piece using my new collab art tool collection, which includes a custom engraved travel palette and watercolor sketchbooks with my artwork on the covers. It's always been a dream of mine to design functional and beautiful gear for artists, and I'm just thrilled to be able to use my own tools for all of my future trips. You can find a link to them in the description box below. Now grab your brushes and let's jump in. I was exploring the Japanese countryside when I found this very cute farmhouse surrounded by sunflowers, so I decided to sketch it. It was a brutally hot summer day, but fortunately, there is a museum/community center right across the street with some much needed AC, and they were kind enough to let me use their table. I started with a quick pencil undersketch. I'm using an orange pencil because the color is light enough that it'll just kind of disappear after I put in the watercolor, and I won't have to erase it, which helps me sketch faster. Let me trace over the sketch so you can see it better. When composing this scene, I simplified and adjusted a number of things from the actual view in front of me. First, I wanted the main focus to be the sunflowers and the little house, so I made them a lot bigger than they actually are. I also thought the greenhouse is really cute, so I moved it closer to the house and put it in front of the trees so you can see that iconic arch that makes it instantly recognizable as a greenhouse. I also thought the top of the mountain is lined up a little too perfectly with the shape of the roof, so I shifted it to the side a bit to make the composition feel more balanced. For the house, I simplified a lot of the details in the windows and doors, but I did keep the satellite dish and the antenna because they add some fun visual interest to the silhouette. Whenever I'm sketching, I always do this kind of mental planning before I start so I can focus on the most important things that make the scene interesting and build up the rest of the drawing around it. For painting, I'm using my collab palette. If you got this, you would have the same color layout. I'll be using most of these colors today. Normally, I would clip my palette onto my sketchbook when I'm painting outdoors, but today I have the luxury of a table to lay everything out. I'm using Staedtler water brushes for this. Water brushes definitely take some getting used to, but they are a lot more convenient for painting on the go since you don't need to carry water cups. I'm starting with the sunflowers first because they are the star of the painting. Yellow is also the lightest color, which means I can't layer it over anything darker later on. So I'm putting down the yellow first and then painting everything else around it. I'm using very loose brush strokes here. It's not about capturing each petal perfectly, but rather just making quick organic shapes that kind of resemble sunflowers while varying their size and shape so they look more natural. Next, I'm mixing sap green and lemon yellow to get this bright, crisp green of the rice fields. This is one of my favorite mixes for spring and summer landscapes. I'm making these roundish, natural-looking shapes and occasionally leaving some white space in between. As I go along, I add a little bit more yellow or a little bit more green to the mix so that the color has some variation to it and it's not just a single flat block. While the wash is still wet, I'll dab in some more concentrated green to the bottom to create depth. The same thing with the patch of rice field on the bottom, I'm changing the color slightly as I go along. Now I'm using yellow ochre to paint the small dirt path. I often leave white space between different colors rather than very carefully painting around them. It's not only because I can sketch faster this way, but also because I think it adds some nice breathing room and feels more natural. For the trees, I'm using a slightly darker green by adding ultramarine to the mix, and again changing the mixing ratio as I go to add variation to the color. You might have noticed that I only have one green color in my palette, which is sap green, and I just add yellow or blue to get different shades of green. I find that using a limited palette makes my colors look more cohesive overall, rather than having a lot of very different pigments. For the sunflower stalks, I'm using a more concentrated sap green, and I'm kind of wiggling the tip of my brush as I paint to make these loose, natural-looking leaves. I'm drawing them in different sizes and at different angles so they don't look copy-pasted from each other. Actually, a lot of people don't like these cheap water brushes because the tip is a little blunt and you can't get very precise details. But personally, I find this works perfectly for the loose, carefree sketching style that I enjoy. Next, I'm mixing cadmium yellow and cadmium orange to get a slightly darker yellow color to add some shadow and depth to the sunflower petals. Notice that I don't add it to every single petal, I just randomly scatter it around. For the middle part of the flowers, I'm painting these loose donut shapes rather than filling in the entire circle. I guess I just really like that light and airy feeling that comes with leaving a lot of white in my sketches. Now I'm doing a very abstract version of the greenhouse, drawing in the main structure lines and shadow areas, rather than trying to make out all the tiny little details. This is not the focus of the sketch, so I'm not going to spend too much time fretting over it. Onto the house. Even though the two layers of roof have different colors in real life, I'm painting both of them red, because it'll look a bit more cohesive, and the red color will pop very nicely against the mostly green background. I'm adding more burnt sienna as I go, so the color doesn't look too uniform. I also dabbed it lightly with my paper towel to add some more texture. For the smaller house on the side, I did stick to its original bluish-gray color. I'm keeping the white of the walls and just adding a blue shadow below the roofs and to the outlines of the house. The windows and doors are going to be really simple shapes. You don't really need a lot of details to know that these are windows and doors. I'm just going over the darkest parts of the shadows again, which is immediately below the roof, as well as darkening parts of the roof tiles to add some dimension to it. Notice that I'm only darkening small sections of it rather than every single line, so it doesn't look too stiff. Now adding the little antenna detail on the rooftop, and the house looks so much cuter with it. The green parts are dry now, so I'm adding a slightly darker shadow to the rice field, as well as adding some more texture to the trees. I am just drawing overlapping big circles and small circles to create these natural looking shadows. The mountains in the background will appear kind of hazy and blurry, so I'm keeping my brush very wet and changing the color mix as I go to create some nice soft gradients. They also look more blue than the trees in the foreground, so I'm taking care to add more ultramarine and indigo into my mix so they don't blend together with the trees I've already painted. Leaving a very thin white outline around the trees helps with this as well. To separate the different layers of mountain ranges, I'm using more yellow to paint the layer in the front, but blending it into the other layer slightly while it's still wet, so it has that hazy look to it. While I have this dark green color, I'm going to keep using it to add some shadows to the sunflower stalks, especially at the connection points where the stalk meets the ground or the leaves meet the stalk. This extra contrast creates the illusion of having more details without actually painting a lot of details. I'm going to do the same for the dirt path as well, with a slightly darker grayish brown. Here is a super easy way to paint sky and clouds. First, I'm drawing these bubbly, cartoonish outlines for the clouds and filling in the sky around them with a flat wash of cerulean blue. While it's still wet, I'm taking a dry paper towel and dabbing near the outlines to soften the edges and make them look fluffier. Some of those original outlines might still be there, but that just adds some nice texture to the clouds. Next, I'll make a very light mix of grayish blue to paint the shadows at the bottom of the clouds, using clean water to blur out any harsh edges. And I am finished. A super loose and fun sketch done in only 40 minutes. This is such a nice way to relax during my trips and capture memories in the moment. The staff at the museum were really happy to see my sketches too.
ありがとうございます。向こうなんですね。向こうの民家が。なんかすごいいいとこみたい。いや全然すごいいいところですよ。
It turns out this little museum is dedicated to the artist Iwasaki Chihiro, who illustrated one of Japan's most beloved children's books, Toto-chan. I actually read it when I was really young. The staff told me that Chihiro loved travel sketching as well, and they showed me some of her drawings from her trips around the world back in the 60s and 70s. Her sketches look so deceivingly simple, but they are filled with so much charm and character. It is wonderful to think that I stumbled into her museum while doing my own travel sketching. It's almost as if our shared passion brought us together across nearly half a century. It's experiences like this that make keeping a travel sketchbook so extra special for me. Connecting with local people, capturing the native landscape, and discovering unexpected little gems along the way. I hope this has been a useful look inside my sketching process, and in sharing this video with you, I would love to encourage you to also take a sketchbook outside and document small joys in your life. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a future sketching adventure.